Now remember, I don't want you talking to him unless I'm around. You hear? Yes, Dad. I'm serious. Now tuck in your shirt. He's here. The front door swung open, and there stood Uncle Tommy, drenched in sweat from a day's work in the summer's heat. It's a scorcher out there, ain't it? He said, putting his bag on the floor and untying his boots. I appreciate you letting me crash for the night. Just so long as you're gone in the morning, my dad replied coldly. Of course. Now, Uncle Tommy said, turning to me and lowering himself to a knee. Where's my hug at? Been a while since I seen you last. I took a couple of steps towards him and leaned in for a hug. His tight embrace made me uncomfortable, and I let out a light whimper. Don't you know it's 100 degrees out there? He asked, tugging at my long sleeves. I haven't been outside today, I recited to him. Don't you have some chores to finish up? Dad interjected. I knew that was my cue to leave, so I shuffled off to my room. Later that night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to be comfortable, when I heard the thud of footsteps in the hallway outside my room. After several long seconds of silence, the door opened quietly. The dark silhouette of a man entered the room, and the door closed again. For several more seconds, there was nothing but unrelenting silence. I might have thought I had dreamt it all, if it weren't for the sound of a hushed breath being carefully released. I could feel him getting nearer. The warmth of another person in the room was unfamiliar at this hour. I was not prepared for this. I prayed he would go away, to even come back in the morning if he must. He reached down and touched me. He rolled me onto my stomach and lifted up my shirt. From the corner of my eye, I could see two things: the faint beam of a pocket flashlight and Uncle Tommy's eyes studying my bare skin. His rough fingers ran up and down my back. Suddenly, he got up, walked to the bedroom door, and left. I tried again to fall asleep, eventually succeeding. He was gone by the time I awoke. Around noon, the phone rang while my father was out. Hello? I answered. Hey, buddy. Uncle Tommy? Yeah, your dad around? No, sir. Went to the store. Good, he said, his voice a bit shaky. He was silent for a moment. I'm calling about last night. I don't know if you were awake or not. I was. Well then, I'll just get right to it. I've got a question for you, and I need you to be honest with me. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Where did you get all the bruises from? It was a typical autumn afternoon. The sun was mellow, the wind was soft, and I was riding my bike blissfully down a deserted country road. Hey mate, a man's voice ripped through my thoughts. I looked around. A grey van had pulled up alongside me, and the driver craned his neck over to me. Do you know anyone named Carl Rillis? Karlrillies? Asked the driver. He smiled, baring his blindingly white teeth. A grey cap perched on top of his long, dark mane. Oh no, sorry. I mean, I don't know. Do you know the name of the street? Maybe I could direct you there. I stammered. Still smiling, he said, no worries. Gave me a thumbs up and drove away. Bewildered, I watched as the grey van slowly disappeared around the bend. What was that about? Whatever, I shrugged and carried on. The sky was crimson by the time I decided to go home. The streets were empty as I rode through town. In the melancholic twilight, I suddenly saw it again. The grey van slowly approaching me. It was the same van and the same man. Do you know anyone named Carl Rillis? Karlrleies. The same question, asked in the exact same way. I stared at his eerie, artificial smile in bewilderment. Surely he was not still looking and had forgotten our previous encounter. Overcome with emotions, I hysterically said, "No," then sped away. Looking back, I saw the grey van slowly turning around. After abruptly turning left, I shoved myself into a small alley. Between the terraced houses, I stood panting in the shadow, sweating from the effort and the fear. The grey van slowly drove past my hiding place. I held my breath, counted to 100, then, as stealthy as a cat, I sneaked out on my bike. To my great horror, the grey van was still at the top of the street. The driver was in conversation with another passerby. He asked the same question as the passerby shook his head. I made a run for it. I got to my house and collapsed onto my sofa, trying to calm myself. I was safe. Clearly, there was something sinister about a man just driving around, asking every person he met about another strange person. Carl Rillis? That name was distinctive enough that he could have just gone straight to the police's office and get an answer. So why didn't he? And who was Carl Rillis? It sounded almost like the driver only wanted to know if I knew who the guy was. No more, no less. Curiosity got the better of me as I decided to Google the name. Immediately, I wished I didn't. Serial killer on the run, Carl Rillis. I looked at dozens of alarming news headlines, and there, on the page, with his long black mane and blinding white smile, the grey van driver looked back at me. The doorbell chimed. I'm infected. You know what I'm infected with. You saw it on the news. The World Health Organization called it a pandemic the other day. I never thought it would infect me, but it did. Now, I don't know what to do. Unlike some people my age, I don't have a salary. I don't have any sick days. I used them all when I sprained my ankle in January. Brett says I need a doctor's note to get paid leave. You know, to make sure I'm not capitalizing on the paranoia to dodge shifts. He doesn't want to set a precedent. Problem is, I can't afford the bill. Sure, it's not a 100K heart attack bill. I know I need to self-quarantine, but I don't have any savings. But $175 for a checkup is almost half my week's pay. I can't pay rent if I don't go out and make rent money. You know what I need to do, but I'm not sure I have the stomach to do it. I check the clocks and down a Benylin shot. 45 minutes until my shift starts. Gotta get moving. Donning a medical mask, I broke quarantine. As I rode the bus, disease spewed from my mouth like a thick green fog. My noxious gases carried malicious little germs. A child looked up at me. Microscopic predators scurried across her skin, into her eyes and mouth. Soon, she too leaked green. I imagined her sick and dying. I imagined all the people her infernal vapors would infect. She smiled at me. Smile while you can, little one. Smile before the plague begins. Getting off the bus, I watched 1,000 subtle suicides. A man on a bench licked ketchup off his hand and began leaking green. A little boy sipped from a public fountain and began leaking green. A woman, already leaking, kissed her husband, regurgitating green into his mouth like a mother bird. I coughed. Bystanders recoiled. If they only saw what I could see, they would break down in tears. When I showed up at work, Brett yelled at me and told me to take off my mask. He told me I'm scaring away the customers while spitting leak like a toxic flamethrower. I protested, but he insisted. "Just wash your hands," he said. "It'll be fine," he said. I washed my hands, dirtying them again the second they touched my breath. By the time I'd gotten ready and clocked in, plague filled the building like a tainted hotbox. I thought about leaving. I thought about running away, but I didn't. Instead, I put on a smile and greeted my next victim. "Welcome to Burger King. May I take your order?" It started 3 months ago, when a new student enrolled in our school. Our class advisor called her to introduce herself in front of the class. It was a few steps from her seat to the chalkboard, since she was at the front row, and yet, the taps she made with her wooden heels were rhythmic, soothing even. She was, by definition, the expected class hottie for the school year. "Hello, my name is Myru. Nice to meet you all." The last thing everyone wanted her to have to accompany her raven hair, beautiful eyes, and porcelain skin was that voice. The only flaw I'd be able to squeeze off her is that she never smiles. It wasn't even a week before it started to happen. It was the first few minutes of our first class when our class advisor hesitantly stood in front. "Class, it really saddens me to inform you that Max passed away last night by taking away his own life." Everyone in the classroom fell silent. Some silent sobs could be heard from the back of the room where Max was seated. Before we could even process what happened, our advisor took something from her bag. "Myru, Max wanted to give you this love letter as his final wish." Myru stood up as we all looked at her, receiving the white envelope without a speck of emotion. Weeks after the first incident, 2 more from our class were reported dead, both by suicide. Louis and Patricia were already acting strange before they died. Both had an insane crush on Myru, but never really approached her. As the school year passed by, Myru continued to attract more admirers, all claiming to be in love with her smile. None of them eat, sleep, or study well. The strangest thing is that I've personally never seen her but with one blank expression on her face. Another thing is that they never attempt to approach her, just stalk her from behind. It wasn't long until my friend, Joshua, fell into the same trend. He kept saying that his feeling for Myru is eating him up, like a bunch of worms crawling inside his stomach. But he could never make a move, just silently watch from behind. It wasn't long before the police found his body, inside his room, dead and naked, with wounds that spelled out her name. The next day, I sat in class, grieving from a loss of a friend. Sitting right in front of me was Myru, whose lack of care on this phenomenon irritated me. My class advisor entered the room, and we all stood up and greeted her. And that's when I saw it. Every hair on my body stood up. My jaw dropped. My eyes fixated. Just behind all the black hair from the back of her head, both lips and teeth, was Myra's smile. "10 simple rules for surviving the apocalypse." Find the breathing mask immediately. There are things in the air, small microscopic things, that float like pollen and enter through your nose and mouth. If you've ever been out and thought you smelled something sweet, like cotton candy, it's too late. Your lungs are about to liquefy, slowly, cell by cell. I'm sorry about that. Only drink from fast-moving streams. It doesn't matter if you got a water filtration unit. Never collect water from ponds or lakes. It's not because of the dead bodies. It's the half-dead ones. They can stay down there for months at a time, just waiting for someone who doesn't know better. Stay away from settlements. Any half-decent settlement already has too many mouths to feed. If you ask, they'll let you in, but they won't let you stay. They got all those hungry mouths after all. Do not eat the birds. I don't know what these new birds are, but they smell like tar, and their meat can burn a hole in your throat. Stick with canned goods and cockroaches. It's safe to travel by night, but if you hear a sound like a ticking stopwatch, stand perfectly still and wait until the sun comes up. They'll pass you by as long as you don't move. Do not aim for the heart or the brain. Aim for the legs if they can walk. Aim for the arms if they can crawl. Don't assume anything will stay down for good. Just make sure you can run faster than they can. Red sores heal with time. White sores will rot down to the bone within 48 hours. Remove the limb. Cauterize the wound. That should buy you a few weeks at least. The living don't knock. If you're holed up somewhere with 4 walls and hear someone knocking, ignore it. Whatever it is needs you to let it in, and you really do not want to do that. Do not be alarmed if you see angels. It's normal to see beings made of soft light descending from the heavens. It just means there are parasites attached to your optic nerves. They can't kill you. They won't kill you. They'll just consume your parts from the inside out. Always leave 1 bullet for yourself. It's a brave, difficult thing to make a life here in the after, but eventually you'll get tired. Eventually you'll see that of all the things you could do during the apocalypse, surviving might just be the worst. But that's for you to discover. Until then, good luck. "Oh my gosh, look!" Lydia exclaimed, running out into the crowded fairground. I couldn't tell what she was pointing at until I caught up with her. But it just turned out to be one of those fortune teller machines with an animatronic old woman sitting inside. Underneath was a sign reading, "Madame Fortuna, Mistress of Faith." "I love these things," she explained to me, fishing out 50 cents from her purse. When she turned her back on me, to put them into the slot. I rolled my eyes. She'd mentioned in her dating profile that she was into spiritual stuff, psychics, horoscopes, and such, but I didn't think she'd fall for something this dumb. Yet, she pressed the receive button on the machine and looked genuinely excited when the animatronic came to life, turning its head upward and opening its mouth, making an unnervingly raspy moan as its crystal ball lit up, before all the lights in the machine abruptly turned off, and a small card was spat out, which she then snatched up. "You will soon be graced by divine luck," she read out. "That's so exciting," I scoffed. But if she heard, she did not react, instead looking up at me expectantly. "Okay, now you take one." Come on," I began as I put my arm around her. "Why don't I use the money to treat you to a drink at the bar instead?" But she was unrelenting. "Please," she begged, "it'll be fun. Don't you want to know what fate has in store for you?" I groaned inwardly. But since I still wanted her happy enough to agree to come back to my place after the date, I gave in. "Fine," I mumbled, grabbing 2 quarters out of my pocket, causing her to squeal in excitement. After putting them into the machine, I was once treated to the machine's creepy animated and, like last time, it spat out the card after its lights turned off. "Do you want to read it together?" I asked Lydia as I pulled it out, and she reacted like a kid on Christmas morning, running up and grabbing onto my waist as she read. I smirked. For as dumb as I thought this was, it seemed to have paid off. My happiness didn't last for long, however. Looking down at the card, my eyes widened as the blood drained from my face. The flowery text printed on the card read out, "The police found the bodies. Run." After I read it, I felt Lydia let go of me, and before I could catch her, she already got lost in the crowd. Before I could chase her, I heard a faint sound in the distance that stopped me. Police sirens. I turned to run, but as I did, I saw something that made me freeze in fear. The lights in the machine were back on, and the animatronic's face had changed. She was now staring right at me with a wide, cruel grin. Up until that point, I had always perceived myself to be a fine specimen of gallantry and chivalry. Then, I went and did the unthinkable. I hit my fiancée. It haunts me to this day. Everything started the night my fiancée went out and did not come back. I tried to call her, and it went to voicemail every single time. Pacing the apartment, I conjured up all sorts of imaginative scenarios in my poisoned, possessive, paranoid mind. Around 1 a.m. was when I went into full panic mode. The phone got overheated and died on me, yet no one I called knew where my fiancée was. 2 a.m. I drove like a madman to the places at which she could have been. No luck. 6 a.m. I collapsed on my sofa, exhausted. The harsh sunlight slapped me with a start. It was streaming in from the glass door that opened up to the balcony, where my fiancée silently sat, staring at me. I sat bolt upright, nauseated by the sudden movement and by whom I was looking at. Her hair was messed up, eyes unfocused, makeup smeared, skin paled, clothes torn and wrapped lazily around her body. What happened to you? Where have you been? Are you okay?" I fired the questions at her, while shaking her shoulders to refocus her gaze. Her skin was cool, and she remained silent. That pathetic silence burned the last silver of patience I had in my heart. I erupted. My voice shook in a fit of rage. I screamed my last syllable, yet she just sat there, voiceless and emotionless. A tear traced its way down her cheek, and I lost it. My hand shot up in a violent blur and landed on her already battered face, full of hatred, anger, and bitterness. I knew I was wrong, only too late. Her head came flying out of her neck, rolling like a deformed bowling ball on the timber floor. The shockwave pushed me stumbling back into the room. I accidentally hit the remote control as I collapsed onto the coffee table. The local news channel flared up. Bringing to you the latest breaking news at this hour. A female body was discovered by local police this morning with signs of sexual assaults. Forensics results show that the time of death is likely to be between 12 p.m. and 1 a.m. today. The killer decapitated the victim in this brutal murder and took the head with him. Police are calling for it. I looked around, staring at the soulless head of the one I loved, and still do. "I'm sorry. Please don't hit me again." Her lips trembled out the words. And that, officer, is exactly what happened. I swear. What are you afraid of? What chills you to your very core? We all have one thing. Is it dark? A blackness so pure that you can't see your hand in front of your face? Could you last being lost in the woods, hiding from both the known and unknown, wondering if you'll ever make it home? Are you afraid of ghosts? Does the idea of demons and spirits make you nervous? Or maybe it's just people, killers, sick, twisted psychopaths that want to make you scream. Not sure? We'll figure it out for you. What are you waiting for? Click here. This was the advertisement Monday night on my Instagram feed. My closest friends and girlfriend clicked and filled out the short quiz that followed. I wasn't really interested. I was never too big on those online quizzes. When my friend Chris, the arrogant son of a bitch he was, filled it out, he told me it was retarded. He never admitted to being afraid of anything. After he completed the quiz, he received an email simply saying, "Thank you. Your results are pending." Nothing ever came. Sam, my girlfriend, also filled out a quiz. She's obsessed with online quizzes, even the stupid ones like "What kind of squirrel are you?" She received the same email and was pretty bummed out when she was left hanging. My best buddy, Joe, took the quiz since he loved all things horror. He had the biggest collection of horror movies that I've ever seen. Same email. This all happened Monday. It's Friday now. 2 days later, a video spread all over social media showing Chris pissing himself while passed out, drunk at a party. He hung himself that night in his garage with an extension cord. Sam's mom had a psychotic break and has been tied to her bedpost since Wednesday. They called a priest and he's been with her ever since. Her family doesn't want to go public, but they believe she's been possessed. What must be Joe was found in his bedroom, at least what was left of him. Pieces of flesh were strewn all about his room. Bloodstain all over the walls. His head was removed, and a grisly cut was made straight down the center. Cops found a chainsaw covered in blood at the end of a trail of footprints, leading from his bedroom through the house out into the backyard. I didn't take the quiz when they did, but the next night I couldn't sleep. I took the quiz. My results are pending. The bar was closed, and Morris hadn't had a bite all night. Maybe he was getting picky, or maybe the city was just running dry for an old fox like him. All the pretty and dumb girls hunted to extinction. No, there were always others. He pulled out his phone, perhaps to prove it to himself. There were more bars, after all. Secret places that stayed open all night. He just needed a ride. The first and only ride offered made his heart go pitter-patter. "Amanda," he said out loud, chewing each syllable like a last meal. No stars, no history. A little lamp, all alone on a Tuesday night. She was there in 2 minutes, driving a little green Japanese thing and waving through a tinted window. Morris helped himself, diving into the passenger seat. "Lovely night, isn't it, Amanda?" The girl frowned, her eyes dancing over so slightly in her skull. "I think you're supposed to be in the back seat." No, I get sick in the back." She was small and maybe a little plump for his taste, but the face was good. The face was just his type. "Okay," she said. "Should be there in 5 minutes." "Take your time," said Morris. The car was cramped, but it would do. Spacious enough for what he needed. "First night?" The girl considered the question. "Just new to this app." "Oh, of course," said Morris with a laugh. "What color are your eyes, Amanda? They're quite striking." The girl flinched, unconsciously turning her head away. "You think so?" "I do," said Morris. "And I meet a lot of girls, but hardly with any eyes like that." "But some?" Now Morris flinched, more out of surprise than anything. "1 or 2. The girl nodded. "My sister has eyes just like me." "I wouldn't mind meeting her, then. I bet she's just as pretty as..." Morris looked out the window. He hadn't been paying attention to the road, only Amanda. "I think you're going the wrong way." They pulled to a stop outside of an abandoned warehouse. "You've already met my sister," said the girl, killing the engine. "I don't think you've met the rest of my family, though." 5 men came out of the warehouse, followed by 2 women. The men carried baseball bats and big, heavy wrenches. The women looked just like Amanda, an older version and a slightly younger version, both with those same striking eyes. "Wasn't sure which app you used, so I signed up for all of them," said the girl. "You know, I could have killed her," said Morris, voice raising as the panic slowly crept in. "I didn't, though." The man reached the car, yanking open the passenger side door. "Don't worry," said the girl as they dragged the screaming Morris out onto the pavement. "We won't make that same mistake." It started around puberty. The defiance, the swearing. locking his bedroom door, playing loud music. I don't know when he started using drugs. He didn't even have money to keep up with that habit, so he started selling them. Then he started stealing. I tried talking to him, but he wouldn't listen. Sometimes he shouted over me or raised his fist. His stepfather, Bill, intervened once and wound up with a black eye. It was ruining our marriage. Bill spent long days outside, driving the fields over and over with harrows, loosening up dirt for planting. We barely talked. We were never intimate. So, when I found Joey's note on the counter last Friday, announcing he'd gone to live with his father, as much as I was upset, I was also relieved. Bill rubbed my back while I sobbed, and it was me, not him, that said, maybe this is for the best. I put Joey out of my mind as best as I could for the weekend, and it worked. I actually found myself smiling for the first time in months. On Monday, I decided to call his father to make sure that he had arrived all right, make sure he was eating, make sure he wasn't in jail already.
The little shit never came here,
his father said. I collapsed on the floor.
What do you mean?
Bill asked, as startled as I was. I called the police, I called the hospitals, I even called the fire department. Their calmness in the face of my despair was maddening. Finally, I tried calling Joey. It rang endlessly. Then it went into voicemail. "I'm not here, so F off," said my son's recorded voice.
"Leave him a message,"
Bill suggested.
"He'll call back soon, I'm sure."
But I needed to talk to him now. I called again and again. On probably the 10th call, I began to hear something. It was faint, but I could swear I heard Joey's phone ringing. Somewhere in the distance, he must have been squatting out in one of the old barns on the property, where we sorted hay and farm equipment.
"It's raining, Mary,"
Bill called after me. He hadn't heard the ringing. I kept redialing every time it went into voicemail. I followed it backward and forward across the horse paddocks, louder here, quieter there, listening intently to figure out where it was coming from. I expected to be drawn towards one of the barns, but instead I found myself circling back over and over to a specific spot in the middle of an empty field, to some freshly churned soil where Bill had been planning to plant. I dialed again and lowered my ear to the dirt. I could hear the phone ringing, louder than anywhere else. Bill, I saw, had caught up to me. "Bill?" I began, my voice shaky. "Did you?" He swallowed hard, not meeting my gaze. Silence, and then Bill looked at me and said,
"He was tearing us apart."
"Stop whining," I hissed. "You're going to do whatever it takes to repay Miss Clover for the damage you caused." He'd thrown, or kicked, or batted a baseball through her front window pane, obliterating framed photographs, piano keys, candlesticks, and tiny crystal animals. Thousands of dollars of damage. It was just his latest calamity. I gave the doorbell another poke. "What will she make me do, though?" whined James. "Clean up the mess you caused, for starters. Then, I don't know, maybe some weeding up back, helping unload groceries, polishing shoe leather, whatever she needs help with." Finally, Miss Clover's silhouette peer through the frosted glass of the front door, prayed it open cautiously, craning her neck past the door jamb. "So sorry again, Miss Clover," I said, poking James forward. "But James is here to make things right." She held her head high, literally looking down her nose at him. "Is that right, James?" she asked. James looked at me. "You can answer yourself," I prodded. He gazed up at Miss Clover. "Yes, ma'am." She allowed him the hint of a smile, cast the door wide, and ushered him in. "I'll be back at 5, I called. I'm not sure Miss Clover heard me over the slamming front door. I arrived a bit late, but I figured it might serve James well to prolong his torture a few minutes. It took 3 or 4 rings for Miss Clover to materialize, but when she did, she looked very pleased. "Has he repaid his debt?" I joked. "Oh," she sighed, "there's still work to be done, but James was very helpful." "Mind if I take a look at the state of things?" I asked. "Please," she answered, beckoning me into the parlor. The place looked immaculate. All the crystal creatures had been swept up, pictures framed, candlesticks replaced. 2 of the piano keys, I noticed, were still cracked and broken. "These were ivory, weren't they?" I asked. "Alas, yes," Miss Clover answered. "I can grind up a good replacement. I've still got an old molding. It won't be quite the same as ivory, though." "Shame," I nodded, frowning in solidarity. "Is it alright if I take James home then? For today, at least?" "Oh, yes," she said brightly. "I think he's given everything he can. You may want to wait a spell, though. He's still icing his gums." I halted mid-step. "His what?" "Daddy?" I heard James call, a noticeable lisp in his voice. He bolted into the parlor, his face puffy and red. He wrapped his arms tight around me. What did you do to him?" Miss Clover furrowed her brow. "I took what was owed," she said. It was then that I noticed the bronze-plated plate beside the piano bench, the heavy iron pliers inside, and there, in a cluster at the bottom of the bucket, 20 pearly white milk teeth, some still pink with blood. Mama makes the best pies. People come from miles around just to get a taste. She doesn't have a bakery or a stand, and you can't order them online. She makes them when the mood strikes her. The time don't matter much neither. She'll call you up at any time of the day to let you know that your pie is ready. No one's ever turned one down either. Just last week, Mr. Jones drove clear across town at 3 a.m. to get his addictive, they're called, heavenly, divine. Ain't a single soul had one and not come back for seconds. It ain't the sugar or the fruit that makes him good, although we grow the peaches ourselves and they're the sweetest, juiciest peaches you'd ever see. No, Mama's secret ingredient is love. Real love, essence of love, extracted directly from the human body and cooked to perfection. Mama says we gotta be careful, that stupidity and carelessness is what causes Salem. Thank goodness our ancestors were smart enough not to get caught, but still, it should have never happened. Sacrifices are hard to come by these days, The invention of cell phones and security cameras have made it almost impossible just to snag someone off the street. But we've adapted. We all have tricks. Mama's is pies. See, Mama don't bake pies to make friends. She don't rightly care what no human thinks about us. No, Mama bakes pies so that when she calls you up at midnight and tells you that your pie is ready, you'll come straight over, no questions asked, no witnesses, no mess. And when you get to our house on that full moon night, and Mama's smile is a little wider than usual, and her hair is a little grayer than it had been the night before, maybe you'll think to yourself that something is wrong. You might even consider leaving, but you won't. 'Cause Mama usually only puts a drop or two of love in each pie. This time though, she adds a whole vial. Once the smell hits you, you won't be able to think straight until you get a bite. And once you've tasted it, you'll be so consumed with your love for Mama that you won't suspect a thing when she asks you to come outside with us. And you won't much care when she asks you to disrobe and lie down on that large flat rock. You'd be so busy basking over the overwhelming feeling of adoration that you won't even notice the knife in her hand. And maybe once the metal has pierced your skin and your beating heart starts to fail, maybe then you'll scream. But we're so far in the middle of nowhere, ain't no one going to hear you. Yes, Mama makes the best pies, and yours is ready.
He gripped the edge of his chair tightly. Trembling, he spoke. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
Go on, my child.
Through the thin screen separating them, the priest could see an obscure face hanging low. "So, Father, I met this girl down at the bar a while back. Her name's Valerie. You know how it goes down there, right? You slide onto the stool next to her, ask for 2 drinks, and hit her up the best way you can. I mean, she's great, tight body. Anyways, we were seeing each other for a month before she started to smell." "Smell? Sounds rather crude, but what about it?" "Call me crazy, Father, but I've always known how to tell when a good man turns bad. It's always difficult at the start, don't get me wrong. It's like when milk just begins to sour. You don't catch the smell unless you look for it. But it always starts deep inside. A patch of rot grows right in the heart, and it spreads like cancer cells all throughout the body. Past a certain point, the smell of decay, God, it makes me gag." "Well, son, I've never heard anything like this before. I don't know what this has to do with..." "I'm getting there, Father. I'm here to tell you, I killed her. This is not a joking matter." "Who said I was?" The priest looked outside the booth. The dimly lit church was empty. He was all alone. "Why? How can you be sure that you're not delusional?" "Oh, I wish I was, Father. I was 16 when I caught a whiff of it on my dad. He always cared for us, so nice and so gentle. The smell got worse, and he nearly beat my mom to death. I smelled it on my kind old neighbor, and what do you know? The cops got him after doing things to little kids. It is my gift, and I have to make use of it. I know I have to kill them before evil takes over and drive them to do worse. But that cannot be the only way. Do you not shower when you smell stink on your skin? Why won't you pluck out the weeds before the garden becomes overgrown? There is no other way, Father. I'm sorry." A muffled pop split the air in two. The priest saw the fabric at his stomach darken and burn. 2 more pops sent him falling out of his chair and to the ground. I saw you at Mass last week, Father. You were standing very close to me. Close enough to tell. But I haven't done anything. The priest choked, struggling to hold on to what was left of his breath. But you were going to. You were going to. The voice was now steely and cold. There is no other way. My car totaled last night, so I had to ride the bus to work. I sat down in the last open seat, put on my headphones, and played some music. As I was listening, I started getting this bad feeling in my gut. I have good gut instincts, and started looking around to see the cause. Nothing seemed out of place, except for the girl next to me. She looked like she was about 12. She wore a green dress and white headphones. She also had a backpack on her shoulder. What struck me as odd is that she seemed to have no adults with her, and she was not going on a route to school. Did she skip school? Probably. The girl seemed to notice I was looking at her. She turned to me and smiled. Ready to go? I was bewildered. This is not my stop, if that's what you mean. Oh, very well. She got off of the bus. The next set of people got on. A girl sat next to me. She looked familiar. Green dress, white headphones, backpack. It was the same girl. No doubt about it. She turned to me. Are you ready to go? Didn't you just get off? She looked at me sadly. Take your time, I guess. The next group of people boarded the bus. She got off, and another girl sat by me. Green dress, white headphones, backpack. The same girl. This time, she didn't even wait. Ready now? She shifted in her seat a little, and I saw that her backpack was slightly open. I looked at the opening and saw what looked like a knife in her bag. Quickly, I got up to change seats. I sat next to a woman in another section of the bus. When she asked why I switched, I told her about the girl. What girl? I looked at the seat she had been in. She wasn't there. The woman got off the next stop, and someone else sat next to me. Green dress, white headphones, backpack. She grabbed my arm. You need to go, please. I moved up to the front and stayed there until I arrived at my stop. As I got off the bus, I didn't see her leave. I sprinted to my work, scared out of my mind, and she was there, sitting in the lobby. Green dress, white headphones, backpack. You don't need to be scared of me, please, you need to go. I ran to my office. People were cleaning out my desk. I tried to ask what was going on. Nobody responded. I only heard bits and pieces. They were saying something about a car accident. Everything fell into place then. I never made it out of that car accident alive. And the girl, she stepped in. Same green dress, same white headphones, same backpack. Except now, she was holding what I had thought to be a knife in the bus. But it wasn't. It was a scythe. She looked at me sympathetically.
Are you ready now?
I'm starting to wonder if my Uber will ever come. My battery is dwindling, and I'm standing all alone outside of a club on the edge of town. It has closed for the night, and everyone has gone home. While I wait, let me tell you what happened. So this club has gotten a new life in recent years, as a sort of revitalized hipster dive. It was once a biker bar, almost closed down after a slew of stabbings, and was reborn under new ownership. You know this kind of place. PBR and Fireball for $5, a couple of old school arcade games, a string light on a patio, American Spirit for sale in a cigarette machine. If you got $1 for every beard, glasses, and plate combo you saw, you'd walk out of here with enough money to hit one of the classier joints in town. My friends and I decided to stay until last call. The bar staff were out of there quickly as we exited, and I realized I had left my cigarettes on the back patio. I told my buddies not to wait up, and I jumped the fence, grabbed a pack, and came back out to an empty parking lot. The silence was eerie. I couldn't even hear the sound of the city. I made my way across the lot towards my car and fished my keys out of my pocket. As I got closer to the vehicle, I clicked the unlock button on my key fob. The interior dome lights slowly turned on. Did I see what I think I just saw? In the back seat, I thought I saw a shadowy figure there, but I was too far away to be sure. I instinctively clicked the lock button. The lights went out. About 20 yards away, I clicked the unlock button again, and the dome lights slowly lit up the inside. There was no mistaking it. Someone was sitting back there. The silhouette was all wrong. Clearly human of some kind, but the skull was about 50% bigger than average. The head was crooked. The eyes were white and big, like glowing ping pong balls, as the thing in my back seat smiled at me and stared. A large nose parted the veil of black wet hair that cascaded down its face. I instantly locked the door with the remote, and the car went dark. I darted my way back to the club, looking over my shoulder the entire way. Nothing followed. I was more than a little buzzed, and past experiences had led me to mistrust the police, so I decided to get home and come back during the day to get my car. Surely, this was all just my imagination. I received an alert on my phone that my driver would be arriving. The driver had long black hair, and their face was obscured in their photo. Across the parking lot, my headlights turned on. He gripped the edge of his chair tightly. Trembling, he spoke. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
Go on, my child.
Through the thin screen separating them, the priest could see an obscure face hanging low. "So, Father, I met this girl down at the bar a while back. Her name's Valerie. You know how it goes down there, right? You slide onto the stool next to her, ask for 2 drinks, and hit her up the best way you can. I mean, she's great, tight body. Anyways, we were seeing each other for a month before she started to smell." "Smell? Sounds rather crude, but what about it?" "Call me crazy, Father, but I've always known how to tell when a good man turns bad. It's always difficult at the start, don't get me wrong. It's like when milk just begins to sour. You don't catch the smell unless you look for it. But it always starts deep inside. A patch of rot grows right in the heart, and it spreads like cancer cells all throughout the body. Past a certain point, the smell of decay, God, it makes me gag." "Well, son, I've never heard anything like this before. I don't know what this has to do with..." "I'm getting there, Father. I'm here to tell you, I killed her.
This is not a joking matter.
Who said I was? The priest looked outside the booth. The dimly lit church was empty. He was all alone.
Why? How can you be sure that you're not delusional?
Oh, I wish I was, Father. I was 16 when I caught a whiff of it on my dad. He always cared for us, so nice and so gentle. The smell got worse, and he nearly beat my mom to death. I smelled it on my kind old neighbor. And what do you know? The cops got him after doing things to little kids. It is my gift, and I have to make use of it. I know I have to kill them before evil takes over and drive them to do worse.
But that cannot be the only way.
Do you not shower when you smell stink on your skin? Why won't you pluck out the weeds before the garden becomes overgrown? There is no other way, Father. I'm sorry. A muffled pop split the air in two. The priest saw the fabric at his stomach darken and burn. 2 more pops sent him falling out of his chair and to the ground. I saw you at Mass last week, Father. You were standing very close to me. Close enough to tell.
But I haven't done anything.
The priest choked, struggling to hold on to what was left of his breath.
But you were going to.
You were going to. The voice was now steely and cold.
There is no other way.
My phone vibrates on the countertop as I continue applying the moisturizer to my cheek. Send me a pic. The text is from Ryan. I roll my eyes and chuckle as I text him back. Shouldn't you be finishing up work? I put the phone down and continued my task. A minute or two later, it buzzes again. I'm gonna be a while. Before I have time to respond, another message comes through. How about some motivation to get me home quicker? I put down the jar of moisturizer and think about it. As luck would have it, I was just primed to enter the shower, so I figured, sure, why not? Hold on, I text. I remove my baggy Star Wars t-shirt and undo my blue lace bra for an optimal shot of my, well, you know. After positioning myself with my back to the window, I erect my middle finger and snap the picture. I send it to him, along with the tagline of "Hurry home." With another quick chuckle, I concluded my hygienic routine and fully undressed to enter the shower. The scalding hot water cascades down upon me as the grime of the daily grind drifts away and relaxation sets in. On the counter outside, I hear my phone buzzes once again, but think nothing of it. I sit in the shower for several minutes, allowing the comforting stream to flow down my neck and hug my body with its warmth. Again, I hear the phone buzz, and again, I ignore it. I step from the shower several minutes later and wrap a towel around me. I throw my hair into another towel and finally return to my phone. 3 missed calls, all from Ryan. Confused, I scroll down and see that I have a text from him as well. Grab the gun underneath the bed and hide. I'm calling the police. A grimace forms on my face as I read. What's got him so riled up? Nicole, answer the phone. I'm on my way. Hang tight. Another text rolls through. Thoroughly flabbergasted at the events, I text him back. What's wrong? I await a response. I decide to take another look at the pictures which had apparently so suddenly set him off. I open it, and at first I see nothing amiss. But then I see it, and my heart drops like an anvil. In the background of the image, almost blended entirely into the darkness, on the other side of the bathroom window, I see the face of a man with wide, hungry eyes and a sadistic grin. The phone falls from my grip as my hands begin to tremble. It begins to vibrate again as Ryan's name is illuminated on the screen. As I lean down to pick it up, the bathroom door creaks open behind me. I knew there was something odd about David when I first saw him. He was a handsome guy, tall, with athletic build. The type of guy who seemed to charm everyone. Everyone seemed to like him. He was kind and witty, and people just seemed to gravitate to him. The charade he put on was convincing, but somehow I saw through it. There was just something about him that set me on edge each and every time I interacted with him. Maybe it was a sixth sense, but I always got the feeling he was hiding something. My suspicion was strengthened when I randomly caught him arriving to work one day. He closed his trunk as I pulled in and used a water bottle to wash a red liquid from his hands. I greeted him as usual, but that moment I knew for sure he was up to something nefarious. Later that week, he was alone in the lunchroom and didn't see me come in. I then caught a glimpse of what he was reading on his phone. Effects of Rohypnol. It's not a crime to just look something up, but given the context, I found it extremely unnerving. That moment substantiated everything I had sensed from him, but rather than notifying the police, I elected for a different option. I borrowed a friend's car so he wouldn't recognize me, and followed him when he clocked out on Friday. He returned to his apartment and didn't leave for the rest of the night. I staked out in the parking lot for the entire night. The following day, he finally emerged and went to his car, carrying a large duffel bag with him. I tailed him for the rest of the day as he made several stops at local hardware and convenience stores. Later that night, I followed him to a local bar and posted up outside as he went in. He returned 2 hours later with a friend. It was a young woman, and from her stumbling footsteps, it was clear she wasn't in the right state of mind. My heart began thundering in my chest, and I stepped out of the car just as he put the young woman in his back seat. He did not see me sneaking up, and before he could turn back, I slammed my bat into the back of his head. He fell to the ground, conscious but dazed beyond belief. After taking a brief look around, I dragged him to the trunk and forced him in. He looked up, seeming to recognize me. I smiled and spoke. "What are the odds, huh? Two psychopaths in the same place at once." His eyes sprung open as I wrapped him in duct tape and closed the trunk. His lady friend was out cold in the back seat. I got in the driver's seat and fired it up as my smile grew even wider. A 2-for-1 must be my lucky day. It was Jenna's idea to ditch that day. 8 of us went on our little adventure. For me, it was my first time doing anything remotely rebellious. My older sister decided she didn't feel like going to school that day. My sister was a popular senior, while I was an awkward freshman. I was brought mostly because Jenna worried I would snitch. Sad, I know, but I thought I was so cool at that time. So there we were, 5 seniors, 2 juniors, and 1 freshman, brought out of pity. All in Travis's car. We were going to go to the woods behind the school and hang out there all day. Travis was driving carefully, but I wish he wasn't. I wish the cops caught us. I wish we crashed. I wish we were crippled or killed. But we weren't. We got to the woods just fine. The rest of the day was pretty normal too. Amy brought lunch for all of us. We played truth or dare, and I was targeted the most. Carter gave out the worst dares, and being the youngest, I was targeted. I wish something came out of the woods and chased us out. I wish that hiker we hid from were suspicious and noticed we were all in school uniforms. I wish our sandwiches had poison in them. I wish I fell out of the tree Lana dared me to climb, splitting my head open. But he didn't. We went back to town just fine. Back to a town that was not ours. When we went back to school, the building was a completely different style. The uniforms were different than the ones we were wearing. Jenna's car was gone, and my mom came to pick us up. She never did that before. My mother looked completely different. It didn't even register she was my mom. My father was dead, apparently after I was born. Oh, and I had another sister, a twin sister. My room was completely different. I was apparently a competitive dancer, and I played on the tennis team. I did neither. None of my friends existed. I had a new set of friends that I had never met. My name was different. Our last name was Gardner, not Jones like it was. Jenna's name was Lizzie now. I also had a black and white cat called Tuxedo. We tried telling people. We tried getting back. We tried ditching school and going back to those woods. None worked. We've tried to enjoy our new life. I do like my new sister and my cat, and my friends are nice. But I'm not myself, and I will never be. I've forgot so much the longer I stay here. I don't even remember my old name. The only concrete thing I have of that life is the uniform I was wearing. I feel like a stranger, a poser. I will always be a stranger. I wonder if my old parents and my friends miss us, or if they remember us at all. Maybe they're gone too. I don't know. Please, for the love of God, stay in school. I had been an insomniac as long as I could remember, and as an insomniac, sleeping has always been a problem. I would constantly stay up all night, leaving me tired and dreary all day. This, along with anxiety and slight bout of depression, made for terrible school grades. Mom begged me to go to a psychiatrist to get it sorted out, but I was sure it would go away soon. And it did. I remember the first time I slept for more than an hour. It was the first time I forgot to take some pills Mom had been giving me since I was 4. Had she been causing the insomnia? I brushed it off as a serious inquiry because I knew that she wouldn't do that to me. I proceeded to go to school after telling Mom I got some sleep. She seemed surprised, as I thought she would. "You're taking your pills, right?" Yeah, 2 at night, every night." "Good. Glad to see they're working." I wave her goodbye and go to school. For the first time, I managed to stay completely awake in class. My grades improved with every day, as did my sleeping habits. I had managed to get a 5-hour sleep the night before, that I could only assume felt like heaven. Ever since I stopped taking those pills, I felt alive, free from the ball chain of sleep deprivation that I had vowed never to take the pills again. One night, before going to bed, I heard something downstairs, a muffled conversation. I creeped down to find Mom on the phone. He's starting to fall asleep. This was followed by a short pause. Yes, doctor, I'll double the dosage. Another pause. I understand. Goodbye. I creep upstairs again, without alerting Mom, and crawl into bed. What was she talking about? Were those pills really the reason I couldn't sleep? Why? I didn't need long to answer that question. For the first time, in the middle of the night, I woke up to a howling wind. I stayed up for a while, watching the trees swaying. That's when I noticed it. It was only a shadow, barely a shadow, more of a silhouette on the moonlight's grass. Its shoulders were right angles and its arms went down to his knees. It was a statue, barely moving in the wind, and I could feel it staring at me. Then it turned its head. A long beak emerged from the shadow of the torso. The beak was huge. It began moving towards me. I could see it getting bigger. It didn't seem to step, but glide over the grass to my house as it spoke.
I come when you sleep and hunt when you wake.
Mom kept me awake to protect me. That was the last thought that crossed my mind before seeing pearly white teeth.
Daddy, how did Mommy die?
You'll know when you're older, buddy. His conversations with Dad about Mom always went like this, short and stark. Even at that age, he knew his dad was hiding something, but what it was, he never knew. An 8-year-old child's intuition could only extend so far. And then there were the rules, like how he was forbidden from stepping out of the balcony of their 12th floor apartment. Why? His dad knew that he was scared of heights, so he would never voluntarily do that himself. Yet his dad repeated the specific rule every day, like a ritual. His dad explained eventually, though, after much harassment from him, that he, as a baby, nearly fell to his demise, but for his dad catching him just in time. Close call it was. Still, gave him the chills every time he thought about it. His aunt, however, told him a completely different reason. She was his mom's sister, and she was always nice to him during the many days she came and stayed. She whispered to him that there was a hidden secret out there in the balcony, yet she never clarified what it was. So he never knew, because he never dared to violate the rule, of course. Nevertheless, here he was, for the first time as he knew it, standing on the balcony, clutching the railing, desperately trying not to look down. His dad had gone on a business trip, leaving his aunt to look after him. "Where's the secret, Auntie?" He blurted out the words, trembling as the night wind picked up strength. "It's on the railing, look," she said, and pointed at the cold metal. "Do you know how your mom died?" "No." "Suicide. She jumped from these railings." Nothing could have prepared him for this harsh truth. Shock
He spun around, once again trying desperately not to look down at the ground that once was plastered with his mom's shattered body. That thought dizzied him, and he let go, fell backward. His aunt rushed towards to catch him. She held him tight in her arms. "My sweet sister," murmured his aunt, her eyes gleaming with tears, glassy and unfocused. "Your husband can no longer stop your wish. What you tried to accomplish, I will be the one to finish it for you. Brighten up, child. Remember, your mom only ever wanted the best for you. Me too." Locking him in her arms, smiling, she jumped.
Thank you for making coffee, I say to my wife, even though it tastes horrible. She knows I hate hazelnut blends. I think to myself, taking another sip. I must pretend everything is normal if I want my plan to work. I look at my watch. I should have at least 20 more minutes. Our fighting had made this morning extremely awkward. She decided to GPS track the location on my phone when she was mandated to work night shifts. My late night trips to the casinos and red light district had brought on an epic fight. "Did you see there's another missing prostitute?" she asked, glaring over her tablet as she turned it for me to see. "Was she one of the ones you liked?" I tried to give her a disarming smile to hide my relief. I take another sip of the coffee and hide my grimace at the taste. She seemingly picks this up and gives a passive-aggressive smirk, knowingly. "I told you before, I didn't have sex with anyone other than you." I look to my watch. 15 minutes. I take a larger swig at the coffee, planning my exit. "I don't believe you. Were you doing this even when I worked days?" she inquired, setting the tablet down. "Paying for women to sleep with, while I laid here untouched." Tears in her eyes now from the pain. She would never believe me, but I honestly did not have sex with any of them. Albeit I did touch them, binding them up and carving sections of their bodies off, torturing them as they were my wife. It was the only way to handle her passive aggressiveness without hurting her. Honestly, I was thinking of her the whole time, but she wouldn't understand. Now her insecurities had provided rock-solid evidence, placing me at the locations of several of the bodies. Her stupid insecurities triggered a series of events leading up to what I had to do this morning. I look at her and try to give a compassionate smile, taking her in. It would be the last time I saw her alive, and I wanted to remember her. "Look, I have to get to work. We can talk more when I get home." I look to my watch. Only 8 minutes left. I take the remaining coffee in one full gulp. It's so bad that it's giving me heartburn. As I stand, I become dizzy and nauseous. I steady myself on the table and chair. The taste in my mouth, it wasn't hazelnut, it was almonds. I look to my wife, holding back the vomit building in my throat. She's smiling. "Oh dear. When I said my first 2 husbands left, I meant they left this world. Nobody cheats on me." Her smile vicious as I began to vomit and shake, finally falling to the floor. I take a final look at my watch. 4 minutes. I wonder if she'll smell the gas before the explosion. I found out what happened when I looked up from the cup of lukewarm coffee to see a familiar building on the screen of the break room television. A news ticker scrolling across the bottom of the broadcast to pump out a bold string of attention-grabbing words with a gruesome sense of urgency. It took only 2 for my stomach to drop and my heart to pound thickly in my chest and my head to swim with a sudden dizziness that struck me somewhere between stunned disbelief and incredible dread. Active shooter. Hey! A voice that sounded a million miles away clamped a hand on my shoulder. That's not where your wife works, is it? I wish I could say that the rest was a blur, but I remember it all with tormentous clarity. I remember the sound of my mug shattering on the floor. I remember how I gripped my keys so tightly as I ran through the parking garage that they bit into the flesh of my palm like metal teeth. I remember the angry blaring of car horns and the screeching sound of tires coming to halt while I surged through traffic with a complete lack of caution. The whole time, I never stopped calling her. I called so many times that each ring felt like a drill making its way through my skull. But she never answered. Not when my shaky hand dialed her number as I stood transfixed before the TV. Not when I tore free from the daze and raced to her office. And not when I pulled up to the wail of police sirens and red flash of ambulance lights. I saw her co-workers. Some were embracing, bloodstains blotched across their clothes and shock etched to their faces as they wept, while the wounded were bandaged by paramedics or rushed away on stretchers. But I didn't see her. It took 15 years to build our marriage, and just 1 bullet to end it. In the days following her funeral, when the grief became so consuming that not even the sleeping pills helped, I decided to visit a coworker that was still hospitalized. My reasons were selfish. I had done nothing but obsessed what her final moments had been like, and wondered if he could tell me something, anything, that might answer the questions, leaving me lying awake at night in a bed that now felt cold and empty. We were hiding in a closet, he whispered, visibly pained by each word, his body a labyrinth of tubes. She had a hand clamped over her mouth, and I held my breath, listening to the footsteps going up and down the office. I don't think he knew where we were. Finally, I heard the sound of a doorknob turning from across the room, like he was about to leave. And then what? His answer will haunt me forever. Her phone rang. It's obvious you're surprised to see me. How long has it been? 20 years? My, how time flies. You must be here for Brendan's funeral. Did you know his family left town shortly after yours moved away? If not for his grandfather's inheritance, I doubt he would have returned. I missed him. I missed you, too. Do you remember that summer we explored the caves behind Henderson's farm? Those were good times, weren't they? You were still a child, filled with youthful energy. Do you remember the games we played? Oh, now I've gone and upset you. Not the best way to start a reunion. But we had fun, didn't we? Well, you and Brendan had fun. Myself, not so much. It seems like I was always the target of your youthful aggression. Oh, hold up, where are you going? We're just now getting reacquainted. I don't mean to stare, but you've become such a beautiful woman. it comes as no surprise. You were a lovely, lovely little girl. Perhaps that's why I endured your constant abuse. To tell the truth, I had a crush on you back then. Crush. That's a funny word. A bit ironic, all things considered. Oh, I've gone and upset you again. Please forgive me. It's been years since I've been around other people. Admittedly, I lack social graces. But back to the caves. You laughed uncontrollably when Brendan shoved me from behind. I tumbled down the steep incline, arms flailing, screaming. Did you hear what happened when I hit the ground? Oh my, you look so pale. Yeah, you most certainly heard my legs snap. And do you remember what happened soon after? Of course you do. You panicked. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I heard the two of you talking. You were worried about getting in trouble. After some debate, you took charge and ordered Brendan to use a heavy stone to finish me off. Much like myself, he was not the one to say no to a pretty face. The authorities got involved soon after. There were search parties, but nothing ever came of it. They checked the caves, of course, but found nothing. You see, soon after you and Brendan left, they found me. Old, forgotten things rose from the depth of the earth and cradled my shattered skull in their claws, sympathetic to my sufferings. They carried my broken body down into their deep, dark abode. I would like to say they nursed me back to health, but it was too late for that. Instead, they bred life back into me. How? I don't know, but I am as grateful now as I was then. So here I am, after all this time, very much the same child you remember, not counting the sad state of my head and legs. And there you are, 20 years older, and here they are, my good friends, eager to show you the things they showed Brendan. Enertech has announced its latest revolutionary product, the Workday chip. With this product, a person can go a whole workday and not even know it. It automatically initiates a sleep sequence in the user's brain, then controls their muscles so they can do their job while completely unconscious. All of a person's energy can now be put into the things that really matter. Hobbies, family, friends. They never have to think about work again, unless they're picking up their paycheck. Soon, this chip became a regular part of life. Some companies even started giving it out for free to employees. It was a win-win. The companies got more efficient workers, and the employees no longer had the stress of a job. You could hardly even tell a person was unconscious. The chip recognizes patterns and could converse, just like its user would. For a while, this seemed like the perfect system. 3 years after the implementation of the Workday chip, the disease broke out, nicknamed the Red Flame disease. It caused a terrible combination of coughing up blood and intense burning pain. It spread like wildfire, and soon the majority of the population was infected. Even though most people were in no state to work, the chips forced them to, automatically. There was no off switch, and it was able to pick locks or break down doors in order to get its user to work. In the end, it didn't matter if a person had the chip or not, everyone ended up dead. From the moment you first coughed up blood, you had mere days to live. The disease didn't discriminate between old and young. Every single person eventually succumbed. It all happened so quickly, that most bodies never even got taken care of. They were just left in their homes to rot away. Now, roaming the streets are corpses, doing nothing but going through the motions as they were ghosts. Dead baristas try to ask customers that don't exist for their order, but some no longer have tongues. Shriveled hands work in factories to produce gadgets for nobody. Businessmen look before crossing the streets on their way to work, but no longer have their eyes. These ghost-like beings are stuck in a strange purgatory. They are dead, but not at peace. Watching over these ghosts are the CEOs, the top 1%. They live in the elaborate bunkers and clink glasses, laughing about how they will never have to pay another worker again. The workday chip has no off switch, and that's exactly how it was meant to be. I remember when the wife would call me outside to watch the sunset with her. It wasn't much for me, but it must have meant a whole lot for her. We would sit outside, have some tea, watch the dogs run around the yard. It was alright. Lately, the sun hasn't been coming up. Some kind of a problem with the orbit or Earth's axis, I'm not really sure. An extinction-level cosmic phenomenon, they called it. The way I figure it, it ain't too much to worry about. The NASA guy on the TV said that what's happening is impossible, so there has to be some kind of an outside intervention. Too much for me to really understand what's going on. I've lived my life, come what may. My wife and I decided to sit out on the porch. There ain't no sun, but we can always just enjoy the outdoors, right? I sat next to her on the bench, and I covered us up with a nice homemade quilt. Weren't long before she was out like a light. Figured I'd rest my eyes a bit too, seeing as how I'm already here. It got cold real quick. I woke up shivering, could barely move my fingers. I looked over at the missus. She wasn't moving. When I looked off out into the sky, I could see it. The sun looked a heck of a lot smaller than it used to, and it weren't too bright neither. I could hear some chatter from the TV in the other room. The Earth has fallen out of orbit with the sun. Temperatures are dropping all over the Earth. Casualties are thought to be. I turned it off. I wiped the frost. I rested my head on the missus one last time. The sun came up, Edith, I whispered. I guess we missed it. It all started with the pull. One moment, New York was full of people, hurrying to work and talking on their cell phones. And the next, poof, all the noise stopped. The streets were empty. Everyone had just vanished into thin air. Without anyone to pilot them, airplanes fell from the sky. Cars and trains and buses crashed. Fires started in buildings and parks. With the fire department unavailable and the nation in absolute confusion, they'd continued to burn through most of New York City. It'd take days to put them out. Of course, after that was taken care of, questions were asked. The government would launch an investigation into the event, an attempt at finding the 19.49 million victims. Nothing ever came out of it. The pull left no bodies, no evidence. Families mourned. Speculations ran rampant on the news. Conspiracy theories were passed around, but eventually the world started to move on. Then, the push. An opposing force, or maybe a complementary one. It doesn't really matter what it was. Body parts appeared out of nowhere. Heads were found throughout the Oregon wilderness, impaled on tree limbs and floating down streams. Toes and fingers were expelled from hollowed out trunks and holes. Flowers bloomed, opening up to reveal human eyes. Questions were asked, sure, but nobody had any answers.
Don't you worry, the place is absolutely child-friendly. Those were the last words our neighbor Sarah told us before leaving yesterday morning. My wife and I shared a funny look before I got up and cleaned the table. Maybe we do need a vacation. After all, it's been a year now since we've been to the beach, and this new camping site seems like there's a lot of fun activities to do, she said, trying to sound as if she's thinking about it, but failing to hide the fact that she's actually excited about the idea. I was working overtime for a few days, and my wife wasn't getting any luck finding rest working at the hospital. After all, our 6-year-old daughter, Libby, had been getting straight A's, so we might as well go ahead and treat ourselves a little trip during the weekend. So after lunch, we went on a surprise camping trip to Ashbury Woods, no further than 10 kilometers from our neighborhood. Just like Sarah said, it was quiet, rarely any signs of wild animals, and close to a lake where I can finally teach my daughter how to fish. Just like any other modern-day parent, I learned how to set up a tent on the internet, causing us to set camp longer than expected. Strange enough, while we were setting up camp, Libby was looking into the woods, as if she was looking for something. "Libby, what are you looking at?" I asked. She turned around and just stared at me, quiet. Night fell, and all the marshmallows eaten, the lights off. The three of us snuggled up inside our tent, with alarms set to make sure Libby and I get to the lake as early as possible. I woke up not to the sound of my alarm. It was only 2 a.m. My wife was frantically asking me to wake up, telling me that Libby was gone. I stood up, panicked, and grabbed a flashlight and a paddle and went straight into the dark woods with my wife. "Libby!" we continuously shouted, getting more hopeless each time we did. To our surprise, when we reached the lake, there she was, holding another man's hand, looking at the bright moon. The hunched man turned his head and looked at us. His eyes were circular and yellow and wide apart from each other. His head was shaped like a football, and long locks of dark hair flowed down from its head and onto his broad shoulders. My wife and I froze in fear and left. We drove back to our house and never said a word. Today is strange. My wife and I decided not to go to work. Instead, we ate breakfast and showered to prepare our visit to the Stanleys next door. They just have to try going to this new camping spot at the Ashbury Woods. After all, it's absolutely child-friendly. James and I have always collected bones. Be it cat or mouse, we would collect its remains, clean them up, and present them in little glass cases. We're a pretty good team and had been collecting for a while, racking up nearly 37 complete sets.
As James was picking up a dead bird he found in the backyard, he turned to me with a sad look on his childish face. "You know, Dad, I really wish Mom was here. You always told me she was the reason we started collecting." He paused for a second to look at the bird in his hand. I wonder what she would think. I walked towards him, dropping to one knee and placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're right, she is the reason we started collecting, and I'm sure she would love our collection, but she is always here with us." I pointed to my heart, then to his. "You know what? Come with me. I have something to show you." I get up and walk down to our collection shed. I beckon for James to come inside. A very rare thing for him, and he follows, still clutching the bird. We walk to a lump of cloth at the back of the shed. "I think you're old enough to see this one. This is the first collection I did, and I'm very proud of it." I lift the cloth, hearing a very audible thud as the bird's body hit the ground. James stares in awe, or in horror, at my first collection. "You're right, James. She was the reason I started collecting, and she will always be here with us." James continued to stare at the bones of his mother. "I'm the mother of a picky eater. He's 2 years old and one of the most well-behaved kids I know. But whatever I find at the store never seems to satisfy my little man. I've put up with it for a long time, but it gets old real quick. The cashier at the local corner store knows me by name. He even jokes about my son being an insatiable black hole. All I could muster was a small choking laugh, because of course it's funny to someone on the outside. Their child isn't as stubborn as a mule. I tried everything. Play noises didn't help, or at least they don't now. He used to glow over the thought of applesauce on a spoon plane, but at some point it changed. Making a game out of the chicken nuggets didn't help either. More than once I have tried offering an incentive of ice cream, but it was very clear I was talking to a brick wall. He just sat there in his high chair, refusing to cooperate in the slightest. I am not the kind of parents that stands for this type of behavior, so I eventually decided to do what my parents would have done. The rule is, he'll have to sit at the table until he eats. I thought the hunger strike would surely last a few hours, but at the end of the day, there he sat with his untouched plate. I didn't enjoy it, but I told him to eat or sleep at the table for the night. When I woke the next morning, flies covered his leftover meal, and still he sat. The stench of rotten food filled the dining room to the brim with its horrendous smell. Surely his chocolate milk was the main culprit. A wave of my hand shooted most of the flying bugs away from the plate, but one just flew up and landed on his cloudy eyeball without a blink. I really had to admire his commitment. I guess he learned it from me. The day my father first raised his hand against me was the day I first saw her. Long, pale hair, deep dark eyes, and a grey dress. She was standing behind me when I looked at the mirror in the bathroom after washing my face. The door behind me was open, and she was standing in the hallway, looking at me with a sorrowful smile. I was surprised. We never had any visitors at home. When I turned around, she was gone. I saw her more often after that, always in a mirror, a small distance away from me. I was scared at first, because she only came when I had been crying. I tried avoiding mirrors, but then I would see her in the reflection of a window or some polished surface. Over time, I got used to her. I had tried talking to her, and she seemed to understand me, but she never answered. She became my friend in the darkness. She was the one who listened to me when no one else would. She offered me smiles with sad eyes, and I stopped feeling so alone. As I grew older and my darkness grew, she appeared more often. On particularly bad days, I noticed her appearing 1 or 2 steps closer to me than before. Strangely, that comforted me, as she was the only one who had ever been close to me. But then, I met someone. I fell in love, and I fell hard. It was wonderful at first, and the dark days became less and less. My friend left with them. I missed her, because he had always been there for me, but I felt a strange relief as well. It meant that I was getting better, saner. Then there was the accident. It had been raining. We had been drunk. Suddenly, I was alone again. The next time I saw my reflection, she was back. She stayed with me every day after that. I saw her in every mirror. I talked to her, even put up a mirror in my bedroom to have her with me at all times. I loved her, even as many days grew darker and darker. She got closer to me every day, and I welcomed it. We sat on the bed together, me facing the mirror, and her closely behind me. One day, on a particularly dark day, I knew that we would finally be close enough to touch. I let myself fall into my darkness until I could feel her behind me. I did not dare to turn around, afraid to see an empty room behind me and be alone again. But I should have, because when I felt her cold hand sliding up on my neck, I knew that she wasn't my friend. She had been waiting. There's an email address that lets you decide how you want to die. Nobody knows how it works. Nobody knows why it's there, but it is there. It works simply. All you have to do is send how you wish to die, and your wish will be granted within 5 days. You don't need to be specific. You don't need to put anything extra. You don't even need to put your info. They know. And once you send it, there is no turning back. Did you wish to die from a stabbing? Did you wish to die a hero? Did you wish to die something inappropriate? Your wish will be granted. People die in their own beds from a hooded figure stabbing them to death. People die saving others from fires. People die doing something inappropriate. People die. I want to die too. I desperately want it to end. Life is impossible for me to continue to go through, and I don't want to live it anymore. But I'm too much of a coward for suicide, so I went for a better option. I didn't want to die painfully, and I didn't want anyone to mourn over my death. All I wanted was to leave this world peacefully and let everyone else who used to be in my life live their own wondrous lives. So I raised my fingers over the keyboard and typed, I want to die painlessly and not have anyone weep over my death. 1 day passed and I was still alive. 2 days passed and I was still alive. The 3rd and 4th day passed and I was still alive. The 5th day was the day of the party. I came over to my brother's house, along with most of my family. Today was the day of his party. Everyone else was singing and laughing, and yet I was sitting in the corner on my phone. I should have known it was a scam. I should have known it was fake. I just wanted to die painlessly, not have anyone suffer over me. So why wouldn't it happen? Why wouldn't I die? Then I got the notification and I went pale, realizing my wish came true. You don't need to put your info in the email. You don't need to put any extra details in your email. And you do not need to be specific in your email. But God, I wish I was more specific. I looked up at my family, enjoying themselves and completely unaware of what was about to hit them, as the words nuclear missile burned into my mind. I know the day you die. It's a gift I've always had, and it's nothing personal either. I can do it to pretty much anyone. Ever since I was an infant, I could tell just by looking, staring right past someone's eyes and deep into their future. The date sort of just appears in my mind, with the spontaneity of an idea or forgotten memory. And it's always accurate too, even if I tell them. I don't tell them anymore. I'll get to the point, I suppose. I know you've read the court case numerous times, so I'll spare most of the details. My whole life I've been laying low, in terms of employment, jobs with minimal interaction, sanitation in small offices, that sort of thing. The less people I have to look at, the better. I'd been employed at the local school for a few months, and even though 1,000 kids come in and out of that place every day, I had become pretty good at keeping my eyeline low, sticking to work after school hours. That was until the emergency fire assembly. 1,000 kids all lined up outside on the concrete. I tried my best to avoid eye contact, mind you, but I'm only a man. I saw one kid who died in about a week and felt a pang of guilt. But what could I do? And then, well, the kid behind him was going to die on the same day. I assume it was a coincidence, or maybe they'd both pass in the same accident. I avert my eyeline. And you wouldn't believe it, 1,000 kids, all set to die on the exact same day. I'd never seen anything like this, so you understand I had to do something, anything. Maybe calling in a fake bomb threat the day beforehand wasn't the most rational thing to do, but it got the kids out of school, and that's what mattered. I thought it mattered. Damn it. I thought I was doing the right thing. You know the rest. 26 roadside accidents, all dead. 55 dead in unrelated gas fires. Over 600 suicides, all dead. On the day I had foreseen. The universe correcting my mistakes. I am not even sure what you found me guilty of, Your Honor, but I know it all seems very suspicious. This story of mine isn't exactly common. Hell, I'm writing this for my cell. You probably think it's all bullshit, which is why I'm going to prove it's not. June 16th, Your Honor. June 16th is the day your daughter is going to die. I saw her briefly before the case began. You can do all you want to fix it, to keep her safe. Lock her in an empty room all day. It won't matter. The will of the universe is unknowable, and I guess I am only its prophet, trying to clear my name. You don't want to do this, I yelled as I leaned out the office window, but the man remained where he stood, on the building's ledge, the tips of his shoes peering over the concrete. He gazed down numbly at the throng of spectators congregating on the ground below. Many were filming him. "You don't understand," he replied sadly. "It's over. She left me." He was close enough to be within my grasp. I slowly reached towards him, thinking he was too immersed in his anguish to notice me. I was wrong. "Stop it," he shouted, and shakingly inched further away from me. I shrank back. Already the crowd had swallowed in numbers. Many more had gathered to watch the gruesome end of an unraveled man. I knew it would be just a matter of time before the cops arrived. I prayed they'd be accompanied by a negotiator far more trained than myself. "Listen, man," I pleaded. "I know we've never met before. I'm just the night janitor who wanted to clean your office, and I saw the window open. But I can tell from the framed photo on your desk that you've got people you love. Are those two girls your daughters?" He nodded. "How do you think they'll feel when you never come home from work?" I spoke every word in a calm, even tone, although inwardly I was panicking. "Don't you think doing this would hurt them for the rest of their lives?" The man began to cry. "Look, I get it," I continued, never taking my eyes off him. "I'm divorced myself. It's hard. But it doesn't have to be the end of the world. Your kids still need you here." I reached for him again. This time, he did not back away. "Come on," I said encouragingly. "I won't let you fall." He hesitated and slowly began inching closer to the window. I was so absorbed in that moment that I never even heard the office door open. Just as his fingertips gazed against mine, I felt someone place a hand on my shoulder and roughly pulled me away. Startled, the man on the ledge lost his balance. "No!" I yelled, but it was too late. He already began to fall. His terrified scream mashed with those of the horrified lookers. I'll never forget the pulpy sound of his body hitting the ground. I turned around and locked eyes with the cop. Tears streamed down my face. "Why did you do that?" I demanded, my voice trembling with grief and rage. "I had him." He shook his head solemnly. "No, you didn't. Last night, he climbed onto the ledge of another building and threatened to jump. A man fell to his death, trying to save him." An unsettling sense of confusion washed over me. "I don't understand." "You weren't going to pull him back inside through the window," the cop replied gravely. "He was going to pull you out of it." My father and I were really close until he met Bertha. Once they got married, I became their enemy. Bertha was extremely abusive. She was particularly obsessed about my weight. With my mother out of the picture, I was hopeless. "You are deformed," she would say. So I left as soon as I turned 18. I never saw my father again. He never knew I joined the military. He was not there when I got married or when I graduated college. I don't even think he looked for me. Not if Bertha could help it. Now Bertha is in her 50s. Still pretty, although an older version of the same abusive gold digger. She did not recognize me when I asked her for help at the mall. Just another pretty lady shopping for lingerie and shoes. She did not seem to panic when I asked her to get into my car in the parking lot. "I can give you a ride back to the mall, sweetie. No problem." She barely fought when I injected her with a sedative and incapacitated her. She found herself tied to an old bed in an old house. I feed her every day. She knew she would be severely punished if she refused to eat. Lard and more lard. Eat or be punished. After a few months, my dad's stress got to him and he had a heart attack. Some say he died of a broken heart. I made sure people in this town gossiped about Bertha and how she left him for another man. I keep feeding Bertha every day. She was feisty at the beginning, but after a while, she started to shut down. Her body was swollen. Her face was grotesque, and she smelled. When the time came, I got close to her face and uttered the last words she would ever hear. "You are deformed." She looked at me and saw the little girl she used to abuse. She finally realized who I was and what was coming to her. After I strangled her, I poured chemicals on top of her body, covered her with plastic bags and construction debris. When my husband and I bought the land, we knew the old house was condemned. We called the backhoe company and had it demolished. The trash will go straight to the landfill, exactly where it belongs. Janice stood staring at herself in the mirror, as she did every morning before school. She grimaced as she looked at the large swollen stomach and puffy cheeks. She had tried so many diets, each more strict than the last. She didn't understand why this fat blob was staring back at her in the mirror each day. She turns away, too upset with herself to look any longer, and quickly gets dressed. As she makes her way down the stairs, she overhears her parents, her mother whispering to her father, "She was such a beautiful girl. I don't know what happened. How can we help her?" They both go quiet as she walks into the room. She hangs her head and walks straight past them out the door. They know how to help. They just don't want to, she thinks as she makes her way to school. At school, she sits quietly to herself all day. It's been this way for months. She used to have so many friends, so many boyfriends. No one talks to her anymore. Why would they? She thinks. Just look at what I've become. When she finally makes it home, Janet has had enough. "I'm going to fix this," she says to herself. She's been watching a lot of television and YouTube videos. She read every book on the subject that she could get her hands on. Mom and Dad don't want to do anything, so she will do it herself. She takes a small handful of pain pills she stole from her grandmother and walks out to the garage. She takes her time sanitizing her equipment while the pills kick in. Finally, she can begin. Janet takes her clean and shiny box cutter and makes a small incision at the bottom of her rounded stomach. She then takes the newly sterilized shop vac hose and inserts it in. How hard can liposuction be? She thinks as she flips the switch to turn the machine on. That would be the last thought she ever had. The machine quickly sucked up a bit of her intestine, and she fell to the floor, unable to do anything. She watched as she was quickly disemboweled by the machine and left to bleed to death on the garage floor. A short time later, her parents arrive home from work. Her mother screams as she opens the garage door and sees the remains of her daughter. She was nearly skeletal to begin with. Now, with most of her organs sucked into the steel guzzling machine, there seems to be nothing left but skeleton. The day my father first raised his hand against me was the day I first saw her. Long, pale hair, deep dark eyes, and a grey dress. She was standing behind me when I looked at the mirror in the bathroom after washing my face. The door behind me was open and she was standing in the hallway, looking at me with a sorrowful smile. I was surprised. We never had any visitors at home. When I turned around, she was gone. I saw her more often after that, always in a mirror, a small distance away from me. I was scared at first, because she only came when I had been crying. I tried avoiding mirrors, but then I would see her in the reflection of a window or some polished surface. Over time, I got used to her. I had tried talking to her, and she seemed to understand me, but she never answered. She became my friend in the darkness. She was the one who listened to me when no one else would. She offered me smiles with sad eyes, and I stopped feeling so alone. As I grew older and my darkness grew, she appeared more often. On particularly bad days, I noticed her appearing 1 or 2 steps closer to me than before. Strangely, that comforted me, as she was the only one who had ever been close to me. But then, I met someone. I fell in love, and I fell hard. It was wonderful at first, and the dark days became less and less. My friend left with them. I missed her, because she had always been there for me, but I felt a strange relief as well. It meant that I was getting better, saner. Then there was the accident. It had been raining. We had been drunk. Suddenly, I was alone again. The next time I saw my reflection, she was back. She stayed with me every day after that. I saw her in every mirror. I talked to her, even put up a mirror in my bedroom to have her with me at all times. I loved her, even as many days grew darker and darker. She got closer to me every day, and I welcomed it. We sat on the bed together, me facing the mirror, and her closely behind me. One day, on a particularly dark day, I knew that we would finally be close enough to touch. I let myself fall into my darkness until I could feel her behind me. I did not dare to turn around, afraid to see an empty room behind me and be alone again. But I should have, because when I felt her cold hand sliding up on my neck, I knew that she wasn't my friend. She had been waiting